Breaking. Erdoğan is turning up the pressure on Russia. The Caucasus is slipping into Turkey's hands as a new power map emerges. Meanwhile, propaganda is spinning a wild excuse for failed air defenses, claiming drones attacked Russia directly from NATO countries. At the same time, the United Kingdom is pouring major funding into Ukraine's air defense, aiming to shut the sky with an Iron Dome-level shield, leaving Shahed drones with no chance. And in a shocking move, Putin has issued an emergency order regarding Chuvashia, as if there's nowhere left to hide from drones. The situation is heating up. Let's break down what's happening right now. Hello, this is Ukraine Today. Maria Farafonova here with the latest updates. Turkey is stepping into the spotlight. As Russia's influence weakens, Ankara is moving decisively to seize the moment. Its alliance with Baku is no longer symbolic, it's a real military and political force. And this is just the beginning. Turkey is rapidly expanding its economic and energy footprint across the Caucasus, making it clear who is setting the rules now.
One of the central projects of the new regional order has become the so-called Trump Route for International Peace and Prosperity, a transport corridor intended to connect Azerbaijan with Nakhchivan via Armenia. The parties agreed to transfer management of this route to the United States for the long term. For Moscow, the question of participating in the security of this corridor is becoming a test of its continued influence.
At the same time, the Trans-Caspian international transport route is gaining momentum, emerging as a powerful alternative to traditional Russian corridors and linking China directly with Europe. Combined with major energy projects, the South Caucasus is transforming into a key logistics and energy hub, rapidly slipping out of Moscow's control. A new balance of power is taking shape and is rewriting the rules of the entire region.
As a result, the region is rapidly shifting from Russian dominance to a multipolar system where the roles of the US, EU, and Turkey are strengthening. Even if Russia attempts to regain its position after the end of the war in Ukraine, the lost trust may prove too great to regain its former influence.
In Russia, attempts are being made to justify the leaky air defense in the Leningrad region by claiming that Ukrainian drones allegedly fly there through NATO countries. Over the past week, Ukraine has carried out a series of effective strikes on targets in the Leningrad region, primarily hitting the occupiers' energy infrastructure. The narrative that drones supposedly reached the Leningrad region via Poland and the Baltic states has been actively promoted for several days by Russian pro-war channels and bloggers, including military informant, political analyst Sergei Markov and political analyst Alexei Pilko. There is no evidence to support these claims. Moreover, the Ukrainian monitoring channel Drone Bomber noted that on the days of the attacks, air raid alerts were declared in Russian regions that lie along the route of the drones toward the Leningrad region.
You idiots, when you lie about routes through NATO, at least reconcile this with your own official data. Because the picture is funny. Alarm throughout the country, air defense is working, hundreds of shots down, and the drones did not fly over Russia.
The United Kingdom is urgently allocating an additional £100 million to Ukraine, with the funds directed towards strengthening air defense. This was announced on the official website of the UK government.
The UK will urgently commit an additional £100 million for air defense support to Ukraine, helping to defend the country from Russia's relentless attacks.
It is also noted that over the past 2 months, the UK has already allocated £600 million to support Ukraine's air defense capabilities.
As Putin continues his appalling attacks across Ukraine, my message is simple. The UK's support will not falter. This vital air defense package will help protect millions of people in Ukraine from Russia's barbaric strikes on cities and homes as their armed forces bravely defend their country and our shared values on the front line.
Therefore, the decision by Keir Starmer to urgently provide additional funding is not just another aid package, but a clear signal. Support for Ukraine remains consistent and strategic. Strengthening air defense means saved lives, protected cities, and reduced effectiveness of Russian attacks. Against the backdrop of ongoing aggression, this once again confirms that Ukraine is not alone, and the international coalition continues to reinforce its capabilities both on the front lines and at home. A moment of triumph for Ukraine. Drones have pushed Russian forces into a dead end. Even 1,000 kilometers is no longer a safe distance. In Chuvashia, concrete shelters are being installed in a desperate attempt to protect strategic facilities already targeted by Ukraine's defense forces. Cheboksary Mayor Stanislav Trofimov confirmed the installation of the first 11 concrete shelters, which are intended to protect personnel and passerby from fallout in the form of debris or direct drone strikes.
Russian propaganda can talk all it wants about safe skies, but the 11 concrete boxes in the center of Cheboksary speak louder than any announcer. As long as VNIIR Progress continues churning out missile components, the city will remain a magnet for Ukrainian drones.
And if war had once been something distant, now for the residents of Chuvashia it has taken on a very tangible form of a concrete shelter around the corner. A reminder that complicity in aggression will cost at least peace and at most functioning infrastructure. Belarus may soon attack Ukraine or could once again be used as a staging ground for a new offensive on Kyiv, according to Belarus Tomorrow. The decision on the possible offensive largely depends on the Kremlin rather than Lukashenko. Lukashenko himself is trying to avoid being directly drawn into the war as he fears internal instability and public backlash. Here are the details.
The Belarusian Batka, who also happens to be the main idol and sycophant of the Russian dictator, is once again in the spotlight.
We see what is happening around us, and today we need to update our defense. Well, maybe not our doctrine, but our defensive actions, so that everyone can see, and above all, so that our people can see, that we are ready to defend every inch of our land.
Lukashenko, following Putin's example, is establishing relations with Kim Jong-un. The leaders of North Korea and Belarus signed a treaty of friendship and cooperation during the first official visit to the DPRK. The potato father, as Kim Jong-un gave him a lavish welcome in Pyongyang. As part of the official ceremony, Lukashenko visited the Liberation Monument dedicated to Soviet soldiers and laid flowers at the request of the Kremlin dictator, as a sign of gratitude for Russia's assistance. Lukashenko, who has ruled Belarus for more than 30 years, remains the Kremlin's main ally. Since 2022, he has provided the country's territory as a staging ground for the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And now he has also deployed Russian tactical nuclear weapons on his territory. In fact, Belarus has become a key instrument in Moscow's military plans. We
do not consider anyone our enemy or rival, but nevertheless, we are preparing for this war so that it does not happen.
The publication Belarus Tomorrow writes that Minsk may soon either join the attack on Ukraine or once again become a staging ground for a new offensive on Kyiv. The decision about a possible offensive mainly depends on the Kremlin, not on Lukashenko.
Such information should be classified as active operations in the information space aimed at shaping public opinion. Moreover, such operations should be attributed to the activities of Russian special services. The dissemination of this information is taking place against the backdrop of the Republic of Belarus moving closer to the United States. Moreover, the decision by the Trump administration to effectively bring the Republic of Belarus into the zone of military political influence of the Russian Federation.
Experts note that it is impossible to prepare a large-scale offensive without being noticed. For Ukrainian intelligence, the enemy simply won't succeed.
The Ukrainian intelligence community monitors any negative trends related to redeployment of the armed forces of the Republic of Belarus or the expansion of the Russian Federation's military presence on the territory of this state. And at this moment, it is not appropriate to talk about real threats from Belarus at this time.
Lukashenko is trying to demonstrate strength while at the same time pleasing Putin in such a way that nothing threatens his own power. He is not interested in directly involving Belarus in the Russian-Ukrainian war, because this could lead to extremely unpleasant strategic consequences for him, up to and including his removal from power. That is why he continues to curry favor with Putin, which he does with pleasure. We
share precisely the same vision and perspective. You are well aware of our thoughts, and we understand the fundamental Russian concepts. It truly represents one shared homeland. Kyiv, Rodbrist, Vladivostok, we have one homeland. Well, that's just how it happened, not by our will. That there are two states here came to be, and we must do everything so that our relations within this homeland are even closer than in a unitary state.
Lukashenko uses a well-known tactic, the so-called walking between the raindrops. That is, he tries to maneuver between the interests of the Russian Federation, the People's Republic of China, and the United States. He creates so-called centers of counterbalance. This allows him to solve his main issue, namely retaining his own power and accordingly the possibility of passing it on by inheritance.
At the same time, there is no other area where Russia and Belarus have such close cooperation as in the military sphere. In January, Belarus received a new batch of some of the most powerful Russian fighter jets, the Su-30 SM-2.
It is also worth noting the emergence of information about and the deployment of Oreshnik on the territory of the Republic of Belarus. Well, one main point is that Oreshnik is being deployed just 4, at most 6 kilometers from the Russian border. This, in fact, makes it possible to avoid the destruction of the launches as a result of retaliatory actions, either by the Ukrainian side or by NATO countries.
In fact, today the Belarusian defense industry has also shifted to a war footing, a move initiated by Lukashenko himself, out of fear of losing power in the country. At the same time, the potato Führer has long tried not to rely solely on Russia and is looking for other sources of support for himself just in case. If the situation goes downhill for Moscow. By the way, in the US, there have already been discussions for several months about the possibility of inviting Lukashenko to meet with Donald Trump at the White House.
Drones continue to terrorize Russia's Leningrad region. Governor Alexander Drozdenko reported damage in an industrial zone in the Kirishi district. But that's far from all the bad news for the enemy. More details on the frontline situation are in this full military report.
Drones continue to trouble Russia's Leningrad region. The governor reported that there is damage in the industrial zone of the Kirishi district. Telegram channels report that the targeted facility produces gasoline, diesel fuel, kerosene, fuel oil, and petrochemical products. According to the Ministry of Defense, a total of 125 UAVs were shot down over Russia.
I think that Russia no longer has a way out of the situation because every day we are modernizing our military capabilities. These include drones, missiles, and drones with long and medium range. And in the same systematic way, we will now destroy their infrastructure just as they destroy ours every day.
Thanks to UAV strikes, 40% of Russia's oil refining capacity has been knocked out, according to Reuters.
It's probably not even 40% anymore. I think it's already approaching more than half. Because every day our strike drones are hitting their factories. In Krasnodar, in Crimea, across the entire territory of Russia. So soon they'll either be carrying diesel in their hands or in buckets, just like they used to. They'll be putting on their mittens, grabbing yokes, and hauling it themselves.
The Russians are transferring a large amount of armored vehicles through Mariupol, as a result of which huge traffic jams have formed at the checkpoints between Donetsk region and the Russian Federation and back. BMPs, APCs, and tanks were moving toward the Zaporizhzhia direction.
They are constantly transferring reserves from Zaporizhzhia to Donetsk now. As with any tactics or strategy, is the enemy trying to find a weak spot at the junction of our units? A weak spot in order to try to break through and counterattack?
The Russian Federation's spring offensive has already begun, according to Ukrainian military reports.
Right now, the enemy is in active defense, trying to probe in the Donetsk direction, the Zaporizhzhia direction, and the Severodonetsk direction. There are enemy attempts. There were recent assault actions by the Russian Federation. There were about 10 tanks and armored vehicles there. Almost 1,000 specially trained personnel tried to advance. But starting at 4 a.m., our forces began streaming fire. They completely destroyed all the equipment. More than 1,000 people were lost in just 5 to 7 hours of fighting. That's why the Russian Federation suffers colossal, truly colossal losses every day.
Russian drones are attacking American military bases. According to the Financial Times, Russia is transferring drones to Iran that can be used to strike American military bases.
Today, it is difficult for America to admit the fact that the Ukrainian army and Ukrainian technologies are developing every day. With each passing day, Ukraine invents something new and immediately tests it in battles with the Russian Federation. And they demonstrate themselves as some of the best weapons. Do you understand? No other country in the world has such combat experience or is prepared to fight as professionally, correctly, and skillfully as Ukraine is fighting right now. And thanks to the fact that they dragged the war out for 4 years, now it's the 5th year, they have turned Russia into a professional army. A professional army that learns strategy and tactics from us, studies our forces and means with which we fight, and modernizes them. And now they are successfully, let's say, employing them in the war of Iran against America and Israel.
Also in December, Tehran and Moscow signed an agreement for the supply of 500 portable Verba launchers and 2,500 missiles over the course of 3 years.
Ukraine shocks the world again. A new groundbreaking development by Ukrainian military engineers allows enemy ships to be destroyed from deep underwater. This is Cronus, and we will show it to you.
It is impossible to see, almost impossible to detect. If it locks onto a target, there is no time left to react. Ukrainian developers have unveiled something that until recently seemed impossible. The underwater stealth device, Kronos, is capable of operating covertly, autonomously, and striking where the enemy least expects it.
These are, well, absolute masterpieces of engineering in terms of reconnaissance missions and tactical sabotage operations, or specialized strike drones, both guided and unguided.
Kronos is not a classic submarine and not just a drone, but a hybrid platform that combines several functions at once, from covert reconnaissance to full-scale strike operations. The submarine is capable of reaching up to 50 kilometers per hour underwater and up to 80 on the surface, diving to a depth of up to 100 meters in standard mode and withstanding critical loads of up to 250. But the key feature is not the speed or even the depth, but its low visibility.
And not just for radars, but also for echo sounders, sonars, and marine radars. Because the hull of the submarine is made of composites, meaning it's not metallic.
This means we're not just talking about technology, but about a new level of warfare, where the enemy might not even realize where the strike came from. At the same time, Kronos is not just about stealth, but also about power. The device is equipped with 6 torpedoes capable of hitting targets at distances of up to 3 kilometers, turning this compact platform into a fully fledged combat tool. But perhaps even more important is its autonomy. The submarine can be remotely controlled from a distance of over 250 kilometers, which essentially turns it into a next-generation maritime drone capable of carrying out missions without direct crew involvement.
It can carry up to 11 people on board. The minimum crew for the vessel is 3 people.
At the same time, Ukraine is also betting on another type of weapon that can shift the balance not just on a tactical, but on a strategic level. We are talking about domestic ballistic capabilities, a field that long remained in the shadows but is now increasingly coming to the forefront.
There are 2 major niches in this area. The first is so-called tactical ballistics with a range of up to 200 kilometers. The second is essentially strategic ballistics with a range of up to 850 kilometers.
According to experts, Ukraine is already in the final stages of developing a whole range of ballistic solutions. This is not about a single project, but several lines being worked on by different teams at the same time.
This includes the so-called HROM complex. There is information that it is in the final stages of testing. This means that Ukraine may acquire a whole range of different ballistic missiles with ranges of up to 500 kilometers and up to 850 kilometers. And this could become a significant strategic turning point.
In fact, this means that not only frontline positions will be targeted, but also deep military facilities, depots, logistical hubs, and the infrastructure that supports the entire war effort. Russia is physically unable to shield its entire territory from such strikes, which means a vulnerability is emerging that did not exist before. If underwater Ukraine relies on stealth and surprise, then in the air it relies on range and the inevitability of the strike. Together, this forms a new model of warfare, where the decisive factor is not the quantity of equipment, but the ability to find the enemy's weak spots and strike where they are unprepared to defend.
What do you think about the latest events? Share your opinion in the comments, like the video and subscribe to stay informed about the main headlines. See you soon!